Contentlayer makes working with content easy for developers. Let's find out how. Tools like Next.js, Remix, SvelteKit, and Astro have been gaining popularity, in large part due to how they handle content. These frameworks are built on top of existing component ecosystems and are flexible enough to enable you to bring content from any source. The catch is that you have to build the mechanism that feeds the content into your site's pages. And building a content processing mechanism sucks. It really does. Let's experience that together by building an example with Next.js and local markdown files. I'll begin with a fresh Next.js project. First, I need to pick a location for the content. In this example, let's say I'm going to build a blog, and my markdown posts will live in a posts directory. Each post will have a title and date property in the front matter, and I'll use the main content area for the body of the post. To create a page for each post, I'll add a template file in the pages directory and use Next.js's getStaticPaths method to generate dynamic routes for each post. Here I have to retrieve all the necessary file paths and then manipulate them to build URL path values that Next understands. When each post is pre-rendered, Next runs the getStaticProps method. I'll use the slug parameter to pinpoint the appropriate source file for the page. Once I have the file location, I can parse the content of that file. I install a number of dependencies to help with this seemingly simple task, and then I write the logic to build a data object that I can send to the page component as props. After starting up the Next development server, I can visit the URL for a post and see the content rendered. It works, but it leaves a lot to be desired. For a truly pleasant experience writing code in the future, we still have a lot to do, including optimizing this process so it doesn't have to be done on every page load. Manually defining type definitions for our data objects. Implementing live reloading so I don't have to refresh the browser when changing content. Incrementally regenerating data for only the content that has changed. And adding the ability to associate content objects with each other. That is a lot of work. And that's why we built Contentlayer. Contentlayer handles transforming content into data so that you can import content into your page components just as you would any other JavaScript library. Let's take a look at how it works. After starting a new Next.js project, adding the Contentlayer packages, and making a couple quick changes, Contentlayer is installed and ready to go. I'll add a single piece of content as a markdown file in a posts directory. It'll have the title and date fields in its front matter and some placeholder copy for the body. Then I'll add the Contentlayer configuration file to define the shape of this data. At this point, Contentlayer has everything it needs to transform our content into data. As I run the Next development server, we can see that Contentlayer tells me how many documents it has generated. And we can explore those documents by looking in the .contentlayer/generated directory. Notice there is an individual JSON file cached with the data for the post. That file is aggregated by an index.mjs file in the post directory, which exports an all posts array. This array is then exported by the main index.mjs file, which also exports all of our type definitions, including a post type definition, which was generated automatically by Contentlayer. Next, I'll use a dynamic route to generate a page for every post. Here I can import the data directly from the Contentlayer/generated directory and use that to build my page paths. And for each individual page, I can filter to find the appropriate object based on the parameters and feed that content into the page component. As I navigate to the appropriate URL, I can see the content for my first post. Now if I make a change to that content, the browser automatically updates in real time. No refresh required. Also notice as I change content that Contentlayer knows what has changed. It uses this information to incrementally regenerate only updated content. And if I create a new post without a required field, Contentlayer provides clear error messages so I know exactly what to fix. Let's recap the benefits of Contentlayer. The code you have to write to process content is significantly reduced and simplified. Type definitions are automatically generated for every piece of content. Validations are built-in and configurable. Caching and incrementally regenerating content just works. Live reloading also just works for frameworks with that ability. And you can scale to complex content relationships as needed. All of these benefits make Contentlayer one of the fastest ways to process content. When we compared it to the DIY method in a real-world environment using Next.js with 1,000 pages, it was almost twice as fast. Then we built the same site with Gatsby and still remained about twice as fast. And when taking advantage of these frameworks' caching mechanisms, Contentlayer was once again about twice as fast. We're dedicated to bringing the best developer experience to working with content. You can get started today by following our tutorial. Then move further by checking out our example projects, or by exploring our expanding documentation, which we've invested in to make your experience as pleasant as possible. And don't forget to join our growing and passionate community on Discord. Find links to each of these and more at contentlayer.dev.